Welcome to For the Record, which is a conversation series where we talk to music heads about their stories and the music that makes them. It's great to have you here, Montrey.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. As with all of these, I'd like to start at the beginning and just get a sense of you and where you're from and when your relationship with music began, and then go from there.
Yeah, so name's Montrey Whittaker. I am from born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, in America, and I guess my love of music started at a very young age. I was in the orchestra in fifth grade up until high school, so I gained an appreciation for music just by playing it, and also at a very young age, I think I was very heavy into the internet. A lot of us are, but I would say I was even more so, very heavy in the internet. One of my first websites was in 1998. I think I was in
Wow.
like fourth grade or something like that. I forget. And during my time being online all the time, I think I, dabbled in so many different, was able to listen to so many different genres from all over the world at a very young age. I'd find myself listening to groups like OutKast that were more local and southern from where I'm from, but then maybe like I would listen to Aphex Twin or Daft Punk or groups like this that I don't think I would have ever been exposed to in person. So yeah, I think just with the mix of being like playing music and just being very heavy online, that's kind of where I got my deep love of music and appreciation.
Yeah, cool. First, what instrument do you play in the orchestra?
I play cello.
Cello. Cool. Do you still play?
Uh, nope. I wish I did. It would be really cool to say I did, especially but I don't play anymore. But I always go back and watch that scene from School of Rock where Jack Black makes he makes the cello joke, if you remember it.
I don't remember the cello. I'll remember if you tell me what it was. Can you quote it?
I think he's holding a double bass or something like that. He's like, I played cello in school, one of the kids said. And he's like, well, you can obviously play the bass. And it's like, all you have to do is turn it sideways. And cello, it's just like the. Anyway, whatever. I wish I wouldn't have recreated that. Sorry about that.
Cool. Yeah. I wish I played the cello as well. It's such a great instrument.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you were, in those early days of being online, like, when you were finding Aphex Twin and other, musicians and artists that you don't think you would have necessarily encountered otherwise, which holes of the internet, were you exploring? Like, was it, like blogs, peer-to-peer file sharing websites? What kind of places were you in?
Yeah, so I would say mostly at the time, this is very, very early internet, so I don't know if people would know this, but I used to be in a lot of groups that would hang out in chat rooms. It was like a precursor to Slack. It was called IRC. And there'd be like tons of these little channels that it was just like a Slack, and it would be like a hashtag for different things. Anyway, there would be communities of gamers, communities of music, people who love music. So I would say, and it was a lot of file sharing, illegal file sharing. Let's just be real. And so I would say that was probably like a big way for me to get exposed to music, was just hanging out in these chat rooms. And like I said, it's cool because it's people from all around the world exposing you to things you wouldn't necessarily know otherwise. But yeah, it was basically a file sharing community.
Cool. Yeah, and then I'm curious if there's a connection between like being part of those early IRC communities and then like the desire to create EARMILK. Like, how did it, what was the inspiration there? Like, how did that, come to be?
Actually, that's funny. Yeah, IRC is directly connected to, or those early communities are directly connected to starting EARMILK. So, started EARMILK with three other people: John, Blake, and Eric. And I met Blake and Eric through gaming, oddly enough. So, three of us used to play Counter-Strike a lot, and we used to hang out in a lot of different chat rooms and things like that. So we knew each other through Counter-Strike, and I think we for some reason quickly discovered that we all liked keeping our finger on the pulse of music, but perhaps from all different genres. Like, we all came to the table with different genres. There was definitely an overlap in the Venn diagram of things that we appreciated, but we like had focuses in different areas. So yeah, it was like just one night, I think after gaming, we were just chatting, and talking about how much we love music and sharing files with each other and sharing music with each other. It's like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should start some type of blog. It really was kind of just super organic like that.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah. And then how did that? I mean, did any of you have like like a background in like music journalism, writing about music, and that you were doing on a regular basis at all?
No, not at all. Not really. I don't think any of us had a journalism background. We just knew, you know, that we had an appreciation for music more so than most. Like we were constantly talking about it. It seemed to color all of our conversations and was always in the background of our minds. And we figured we just, we thought we just figured out as we go. I think the most important element was specifically for our blog was like finding the name. Like I just remember the night that we were just, you know, randomly talking about random names and talking about things like I wish we, what are we trying to share? We're trying to share music that, healthy music, good music, and started
Mm.
going down the rabbit hole of thinking about, things like vitamins and milk and things like that. But I think the biggest moment, to be honest, was just like, I don't know if you've been in a situation like this where you're naming a whole bunch of different names and checking if a .com is available because most .coms are taken, right?
Yeah.
Um, and oh, quick side note, there was a one of my favorite groups growing up was Blur, and they had a song
Mhm.
called Coffee and TV. It was one of my favorite songs in a very young age. If you haven't heard that song, check it out. But there's a music video for that song that stuck with me like forever. I saw it in like seventh grade or something, and I still think about it to this day. It's one of my favorite music videos. But it's a milk carton with I think one of the band members, it might be Damon Albarn's face on the milk carton because they're looking for him.
Mhm.
And so I've always thought about that milk carton, and when we were thinking about names, like Milk came to mind because it was music, Milk. I love Blur. Came Gorillas, like still a huge influence. So yeah, we were like Milk, and then something for your ears. So anyway, what I was trying to say is that moment was the huge moment. Like when we come up with a name and you say, "Oh, is obviously .com can't be available. It's such a cool name." And then when it
Yeah.
was, we were like, "Oh, here we go."
This is it. Do you remember what the first ever piece on EARMILK was?
It's funny. I think it's actually up. I've been thinking we should delete some of our like the first 600 posts or something, but I forget exactly what it is. I don't remember, but it's not good journalism. In fact, I think I'll probably delete it right after this podcast. But I think it was just something we'd found, a post I found on Tumblr or something. I wanted to share. I was like, check out this dope song. Here it is. I think that's it. That's all the wording.
Hmm. And then, yeah, I mean, how did it grow from that to, attracting music journalists? Because my first interaction with EARMILK, I remember I studied music in school, and I wanted to stay close to it. Music journalism like felt like a good way to do that. I remember I was talking to Kyle Kramer, probably about 10 years ago at this point, who was in an editor at Noisy, one of the Vice verticals, about just like, okay, how do I do this thing? How do I write about music? How do I get involved with this? And one of the outlets that he suggested was like, I love what is happening at EARMILK. Go check that out, see if you can get involved in some way, which ended up happening. And already at that point, this was probably 2013. There were a lot of systems in place to make sure that all the writing was elevated. You were attracting really strong journalists, to write about music in like a more informative, nuanced way. And I'm curious, like, where that evolution happened and how it happened.
Okay, so it's kind of a couple things. Some of this is not going to necessarily seem connected, but it is. Part of it goes back to gaming again. So again, like three of the four people we were really deep into gaming. I mean, we were like when we were young, like sponsored and got some money. This is the time when it wasn't as big as it is now, Um, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because the clan that I was in at the time for gaming, I was like became the captain of, and during that time, I don't know, it evolved me as a person. Learned how to manage people, learned how to communicate with people, learned how to set up structure and like all this types of things you might get at like a corporate job, But I was doing like for Counter Strike, so we could kick people's ass. And And I think, picking up all that structure and all that type of stuff translated over to EARMILK. Like we were just some online people that love music, but it's like, hey, we need to have some structure. And I think you remember working with us, like we kind of, we ran it like a real business. We had like all the, we gave you all the documents that you should read and tell you like how you should write and all those things. It was just a slow evolution of knowing that we should have structure. And it didn't start that way. Like when we very first started the blog, it was just for fun. For the first like year or so, it was just for fun, like just post what you can. And I think
Mhm.
trying to remember the biggest moments. I think it's hard to say what the formula was. I think a lot of it was timing and luck. Just like there weren't a whole bunch of blogs like ours that started. I mean, there were some that started at the same time, but there weren't many before that time. And I think
Mhm.
we chose like when like the blog house scene and everything was starting to take off, and Hype Machine came to be, and we got put on Hype Machine, and we had such a very dope name compared to most, a memorable name. I think all those things helped, but also like we kept our finger on the pulse through like the IRC communities and all that. We really knew when things were just coming out, and we had really good tastes. Um, yeah, it's really hard to say exactly what it was. Like if someone were to say, "Hey, how do I do it now?" I can't say for certain you could. So I think a lot of it was timing. But does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, did you have people, at some point in this process, like when as you were starting to gain a little bit of traction, a little bit of momentum, did start having writers, reach out to you being like, can I write, for EARMILK? And was that, kind of the start of the evolution, or like,
Yeah.
did
You
you,
know,
did you actively try to find writers? I'm curious how that happened.
okay, that's actually a good point. I think one of the things that helped us blow up was I know myself and a couple other founders were big into Tumblr as well, and we found quite a few. We would actively go onto Tumblrs and find a cool Tumblr of some person posting dope music, but also random cool images or whatever. Like they had a style or just like they seemed like they curated very well. So I think just like we curate our own music for our own playlist for ourselves or curate music for our website, we curated people, in the early beginnings by going out to random tumblers that we would share with each other, be like, wow, this person's really cool, it doesn't seem like they work for any other website, let's reach out to them. So I'd say a lot of the early first people were people we pulled in from Tumblr websites,
Mm.
and then it kind of evolved from there where every person has their own network, and a lot of the people that we bring to our website, I would say I always describe our writers as people don't really make mixtapes anymore, but if they did, the people that write for EARMILK would be the person in your town that you'd want to get a mixtape from,
Right.
because they curate stuff, and they're constantly scouring music. I always say it's like it's a somewhat thankless job. Like we do it for ourselves where we listen to all this music, but it's ridiculous how much music a lot of the writers scour through. So yeah, I would say we actively went out for people for many years, and then because of those people we picked up through their network, other people would start reaching out to us. Like there was definitely a turning point where we didn't have to reach out much anymore. It was starting to come to us.
Yeah. Cool. I'm curious how, in your mind, this was, obviously like the height of the blogging era has, unfortunately come and gone. And, I'm curious on, yeah, and this is kind of transitioning into the second part, of the conversation where I ask you about, some of the music that you love. And I'm curious, like how your own, I guess more broadly on your thoughts on like the internet and music
Mm.
and, like the function of curation, and just get some general thoughts of like your perspectives on the evolution of that, as streaming and algorithms have become more prominent. And then I'm also curious how you discover music today.
Yeah. So I would say, broadly, I think eh, I have multiple conflicting thoughts about music and on the internet and how it's, pushed out there nowadays. Like, on the, I think there's so much music out there. It's kind of too much noise. And there's so much noise out there. It's sometimes hard to find. It's hard to do what we used to do, where we're trying to find underground things that don't have a lot of exposure. And even when it comes to that, I struggle sometimes because I forget what they call it, but there's a lot of pay to play out there. Who's to say what's really underground anymore? Is it actually like a person that's really signed and they're just trying to pretend they're underground? And should that even matter? If you end up liking the music, it's so many different thoughts I don't have the answers to. I think about those types of things all the time. I personally find music so many different ways. One way is a cheat code. I call it being vampiric, where a lot of the younger writers that we've picked up, I can just ask them what's dope right now, and I don't have to do a lot of work.
Hmm.
And kind of you suck on their younger energy that way. But that's one way. And my friend circle, I still have a lot of people that were around before and during Air Milk, and we share a lot of music that way. And admittedly, I do use Spotify. I feel like Spotify's algorithm is mostly good, but then it's odd too with that because sometimes you'll get the playlists that recommend the right things to you, but sometimes you want to go outside your comfort zone a little bit and be exposed to something new, but also
Yeah.
sometimes you don't. Like for instance, I know during the pandemic, I just recently started getting back into trying to discover as much new music as possible. During the pandemic, I don't know, I got really depressed and could only listen to the same OutKast albums or like the same electronic albums that I already knew. Nothing, I didn't want any surprises to scare me or anything, you know?
Hmm.
But since I've emerged from the pandemic, I've gotten back into like trying to get back into all the new stuff. And yeah, I have all these conflicting thoughts. I think it's can be an amazing time for certain artists because there's so many avenues that you can get your music out there. But at the same time, you know, there's such if you're trying to make a living off of it, there's a way smaller piece of pie that you're even capable of getting.
Hmm.
So yeah, I feel like that's a struggle. But I do feel like when you ask about curation, I do think yes, we have Spotify title, all these things, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm an old head and I, created a blog that was designed to curate. But I just feel like curation is more important now than ever. And I think I could be wrong here, but I just feel like people are struggling to um, find the best sources or you know the places that they want to find music at. And like I said, that kind of push them outside of their comfort zone and aren't just using AI to give them what they think they want. You know.
Yeah, totally. No, I think you're right. I mean, I at least, share that perspective, and I think a lot of people do. It's just like, confronting this. So, we have like a paradox of choice of just being like, there are 100,000 songs being uploaded to Spotify every single day. And when we lost blogging, not we lost it, but like
Mhm.
as it became less, less prominent in our lives, like there really hasn't been anything to replace that kind of human curative element,
Mhm.
and that kind of layer that was really important to, we all need to be kind of vampiric sometimes because like we don't have energy to go through every single thing, and
Right.
we have to trust, like we have to elevate curators so you know they are incentivized in some way, whether that's through like being able to write for a place like EARMILK or whatever. But places like Spotify that are just like these huge big tech companies where they're really opaque and you don't really have a lens into like what the mechanics are, how the algorithm works, who's curating the Spotify playlist, and why. You mentioned like the kind of pay to play stuff. There's like questions of payola, um, as well. So yeah, it's a weird time, and I feel like we need the earmuffs of the world more than ever.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And uh, I think I will admit one extra thing. I think is I will admit I've become slightly. I'm trying to figure out the best new ways to expose people to music as well. Like as you said, the blog world as it existed before is obviously like not at its peak anymore, and trying to figure out where Earmilk stands in that. But at the end of the day, the reason the website was created was, hey, we think this music that isn't really on the radio is dope as hell. You should know about it. Let's give the artists a bigger stage and explore and showcase new dope artists. And there's always going to be a place for that. It's just figuring out the avenue to do that. But I will admit a little bit, after so many years, I did get pessimistic for a while. I've definitely seen artists that we've promoted on the website that I'd be like, wow, they definitely deserve way more than 1,000 views on their YouTube, and then perhaps they might die or something. I've seen that countless times. I'm sure you've seen some artists that you're like, oh, they should have been big by now,
Hmm.
but they died or something, and it just kind of makes you pessimistic about the whole thing. But at the end of the day, music always brings me back, and I love doing this. So yeah, I'm definitely going to keep chugging along, figuring out the best ways to go about it.
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It takes a lot of sustained energy uh, to keep doing this work. But that's a good segue, actually. My next question for you: who are three artists of note that you have heard for the first time in approximately the past year?
Wow, that's a very good question. Some of these aren't. Some of the ones that come to mind aren't necessarily super new. They were new to me.
Yeah,
But I love
count.
listening to them. One that comes to mind is Bakar. Is new to me. I've only heard in the last little bit here. You familiar with that artist?
No, I'm not.
I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a British singer, kind of experimental indie rock style. Really cool. Definitely check out Bakar. Love his voice and just love his attitude.
Cool.
What else? Uh, I was exposed to this artist maybe a while back, but reintroduced recently and went through their whole catalog again. There's a British electronic producer named Joy Orbison.
Oh yeah,
Um, really
Orbison's
like,
great.
yeah, I really like that. I remember listening to maybe a while back, but there's so much music out there. I jokingly say like running a blog like EARMILK. No, it's gonna sound pretentious, but I've heard and forgotten more music than most people have ever listened to. And yeah, reintroduced to Joy Orbison. Really love his work. Um, who else comes to mind? If I had to do one more, it would be hmm. I would say Nilofer Yanya.
Oh yeah.
Nilofer Yanya. It's a really beautiful voice. Feels like it's a real artist. Everything they've put out, I just really love. Also from England, I think. Almost all my artists I listen to at the end of the day, like 80%, I think, are from England, oddly enough. So, but yeah,
Interesting.
those would be my three.
Cool. I love it. Lots of love for the Brits.
Yeah.
um, okay, cool. Next one for you. Most underappreciated artist from your favorite music decade.
Most underappreciated artists in the last decade, basically.
No, no, from your favorite music decade.
Uh, oh man, that's a really tough one. Most underappreciated artists. Mm, there's so many that over the time that I've seen. Let's see here. Okay, this is a I don't this is definitely a debatable answer because most music heads or musicians would be like, "But this person's very appreciated." I don't think they are. I think they should be bigger, like on the radio, and people should be talking about them constantly. But tell me if this is the right way to answer this question. But Burial is who I would answer that with. I just feel like this Burial's more like a artist's favorite artist, but I don't feel like the general public says their name enough
Mm,
because they influence so many people. So
mm.
yeah, they have so much appreciation by anyone that loves music, but I don't think they're as appreciated as they should be. It should be, as much as I love Daft Punk, right? Like they go on and accept awards and do all these things, but I feel like a Burial, you familiar with Burial?
Yeah, of course.
Should be. I mean, I think Burial as an artist wanted to be incognito, so it would never work. But I still
Mm.
feel like people should be wearing pictures of Burial's albums and things like that everywhere, just because it was so influential to me and so many other like musicians and things like that.
Totally. No, I think that's a great answer, and I think you're probably right. As much as music heads all know, I mean, agree. That Burial, is incredible. I always think like a mark, of a great artist is when you can hear like 8 seconds of a song, be like, oh yeah, this is Burial. Like you can tell
Yeah,
immediately. Right? It's very
yeah,
key.
yeah. I love Key Signers. I just started watching this new show. Uh, with Idris Elba called Hijack. In the first 3 seconds, I was like, "But that's Uncle, isn't it?" And I hadn't heard Uncle maybe in a while, But I was like, "That's definitely Uncle sound."
Cool. I think that's a great answer. Um, All right, now here's the big question. You're going to a desert island and you get to bring 3 records with you. What are they?
Jesus. That is a tough one. Okay. So I think I would bring Hmm. Yeah, I think for me it would probably be Burial's Untrue album, I believe it's called, and
Mm.
Daft Punk Discovery and Nas Illmatic.
Wow, nice. That was like the quickest one of these that we've ever had. Great answer and great trio. Those are all incredible
That's a tough
records.
one, man. I feel bad now. Like now my brain's like, whoa, what the hell? There's a lot of other
No,
choices, but I stand by that.
yeah, no, that's the way to answer this question, because if you let too many other options, come into your brain, then you're never going to answer it. It's
Yeah.
not actually a possible question to answer. So it was well done. Cool. And then, for people who are listening to this and want to get involved or follow along with what you're doing, where is a good place for them to do that?
Yeah, you can still check out the website, earmilk.com. Stand by for the next year or so. We got a lot of things in the works that we're hoping to launch soon. Kind of like a rebranding, relaunching of everything. So I'll give your audience some information in the future on that. For now, check out the website. And yeah, stay tuned.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. And my last question for you, now that you've been a guest on the show, does anyone else come to mind who, in your crew of music heads, who would be a good guest, to have on For the Record?
Good guest. There's a couple names. Let me think on that and get back to you and see who might be available. There's a couple people I know that were in the music scene, maybe not as much now, but they were definitely big in the blog house era. So let me give you a couple names.
Cool. Amazing. Yeah, we appreciate that. Cool. Thanks, Montrey. Well, that's it. That's all we've got. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your time and your thoughts and energy. This was great.
Yeah, this is really awesome.